After his mother gives birth, the nurses notice he isn't a newborn. The newest member of a werewolf family is a baby boy with thick black hair. Legend has it that the nameless child's arms, cheeks, and back are covered in a thick layer of black hair that will become coarser as he grows older. Monisha Sambaji Route, 22, of Pune, central India, is also devastated that her kid has inherited the same genetic condition that has tormented her for the most of her life. She stated she've always felt bad when she looked in the mirror, and now she was afraid about how her child will deal with the same trauma. Her sisters and she were regularly teased, earning them the nicknames Ghost, Bear, and Monkey. Knowing that her son would have to go through the same misery and suffering that she did break her heart. Monisha's 5-month-old baby boy, who has yet to be named, inherited a rare gene from her father, making him a carrier of the gene. Werewolf syndrome, also known as hypertrichosis universalis or universal hair loss, has no known cure. It is so uncommon that it only affects 1 person in a billion. Monisha said that she was happy when she gave birth to a son, but she was devastated when she found out he had the same condition as her and was crushed to the core. Began to wonder whether she had been cursed or if she had made a life error for which God was punishing both herself and her son. He is, nevertheless, her child, and she is the mother. They're now proud parents, but Monisha's mother-in-law is heartbroken about her grandson's plight as a sweet stall owner. Monisha stated that her husband is very supportive and loyal to his son, but her mother-in-law is not pleased. She claims she is constantly complaining about how he isn't good or that he isn't a pretty kid. He has the appearance of a monkey and is unattractive. Her emotions are hurt and irritated, but there's nothing she can do about it. When Monisha and her 2 sisters, Savita, 30, and Sitri, 19, were arrested for allegedly stealing a car in 2012, they made international headlines. As a result, they sought medical advice and learned about a hair removal cream that they can use every 4 days to get rid of their unwanted facial hair. She continued that her mother-in-law has already forced her to use the same cream on her child, but his skin is too sensitive for it. He's still a small baby who shouldn't be exposed to such creams. As his body burned bright red, he shouted in pain. Monisha is now determined to give her child a happy life and to ensure that he does not suffer from any illnesses. She does not want him to have to go through what she and her sisters did. Our childhood was a nightmare, and we were institutionalized because people couldn't cope with how they looked. She can only hope that people will be more sympathetic and understanding towards her son. A mother's anxieties as her daughter receives the unusual werewolf affliction in another story. As she fell back into her bed, she smiled, weary. Her newborn daughter's wailing filled the room. What's up with her? She muttered something as she watched her mother cradle her infant in her arms. When she didn't react, she felt a wave of worry flood over her. What if her child inherited a life-threatening condition from their family? Monisha, 19, and Kitri, 17, are her 2 younger sisters, and they all suffer from a rare condition known as werewolf syndrome, also known as hypertrichosis universalis. They have long hair all over their bodies, which has caused them to live as hermits and compelled them to wear full-body tunics anytime they had to go out in order to avoid strangers pointing at them or making fun of them. She was now staring at Anita, my mother, who was holding my baby, expecting her to say everything was all right. Silence. She attempted to pique her interest, but she seemed to be avoiding it. What's up with her, mother? She reproduced the sensation of nerves jangling throughout her body. Inform her that her infant is doing fine. Her eyes were raised as she glanced at her while she observed that they were pouring with tears. She took her hand in hers and murmured softly, "She's like you." Heartbroken, she burst into tears. Her kid is missing, and she was hunting for her. She put her arms out in front of her and stared at the small newborn wrapped in a white sheet. She was already sleeping soundly and appeared to be in excellent health. When she gently lifted the sheet away from her tiny body, she noticed she was entirely covered with velvety black hair from head to toe. As she massaged the back of her palm, she said that she could not imagine how horrible her life would be and what she would have to go through. As she knelt down to kiss her, she told her that she'd be there for her. Would it, however, be enough? She, like her daughter, was born with black hair, and her 2 sisters had done the same thing. When her father died in 2007, he had the genetic disease and had passed it on to them. There was no cure, and the only option to remove the hair was to apply hair removal lotion on a daily basis. But it wasn't only the hair that was the issue. With broad noses and wide faces, they had a distinct appearance. Mother, on the other hand, communicated her love for them on a regular basis, and she would do the same for her daughter. However, it would not be easy. Her hair grew longer and coarser as it covered her. Her sisters and she were rejected by their culture as they grew older. They used to stay home in Western India, never going to school or playing outside for fear of being called names and mocked at. When they went outside, whether for a doctor's appointment or to see relatives, people used to yell and beg their moms not to send them to school because can't stand the taunts any longer. Staying in their family's familiar surroundings in the house was more comfortable. Fortunately, they have 3 more typical sisters. Swathi is 23, Dapalai is 21, and Lakshmi is 14 years old. They have always been a great source of support for us, but they will never truly understand our pain. Mother used to wrap them with long blankets. She could also take shortcuts via deserted paths, but if someone noticed them, the entire hamlet would come out to stare or shame them. They were told that there are only a few hundred occurrences of werewolf syndrome worldwide, and the doctors recommended hair removal cream. It was a time-consuming method because they had to apply the lotion on a daily basis, but it worked. On the other hand, her sisters and she were too embarrassed and afraid to leave the house. She got increasingly afraid as the years passed that she would never be able to marry and raise a family of her own. Her mother kept promising that they'd find them a nice spouse, but she didn't believe her. She used to believe. Her own mother, who worked as an assistant in a local healthcare center at the time, swore to find her a respectable husband when her father died of a heart attack. Milan Monarkarande is a fictional character created by Milan Monarkarande. His family was friends with other people who knew about her situation. She wasn't sure if he was aware of his parents' agreement. Because it was an arranged marriage, she couldn't tell Melinda, 29, about her condition, and couldn't meet him beforehand. Because it was an arranged marriage. On her wedding day in May of 2012, they tied the knot. She couldn't stop smiling. It was everything she had wished for. After all, she was about to start on a new journey. Despite the fact that Milan and she had never met, they both trusted and believed in their parents' judgment and conclusions. Milan was partially sighted, but he asked why she had such hairy skin when he stroked her arm. He explained that it's not like other folks. When told him about my hereditary condition, he was really gracious and she felt fortunate to have married such a thoughtful man. In the next town, she moved in with Milan and his parents, and life rapidly settled into a rhythm of regular chores and caring for my husband and in-laws. She was ecstatic. On the other side, her mother was always concerned about him. She was always texting and calling her. "Is everything okay with you? What do your neighbors think of you? Have you ever been treated unfairly?" she inquired further. She was worried that her new community would reject her and start insulting her verbally. She was also worried that her adult life might start to look like her childhood, but thankfully, no one was wounded when she came out. There were a few obvious looks and finger-pointing, but nothing compared to the horror she had experienced as a child. And, best of all, she became pregnant in a few months. She eventually told her mom over the phone that she was having a child. Her fantasies are becoming a reality, although they were all aware of the fact. This infant was almost certainly going to be born with the same condition as his or her siblings. Every day she prayed that she would not be the one to inherit it, but there was nothing she could do.